There's an old saying down here in Gator Nation, it's great to be a Florida Gator, and nothing could be more true than the victory last night over our rival Florida State, beating them 20 points up in Tallahassee. And the fun doesn't end there. The Florida Gators now continuing to flip more prospects on the recruiting trail. Man, oh man, this is the most wonderful time of the year to be a Gator fan. Welcome into another episode of the In All Kinds of Weather Forecast. I am your host, Chris Yanes, here in the heart of Gator Nation, a Gator Nation that is still talking all about its great victory up in Tallahassee last night as the Florida Gators, for the first time in 3 years, defeat the Florida State Seminoles 31-11, clinching their first winning season since the 2020 season and the first time in the Billy Napier era. And we've got a jam-packed show to talk all about that tonight, recapping the game, breaking more news. It seems like every time we come on here now, we're breaking news that we've flipped yet another commitment, and that is the case tonight. We may even be flipping more as we are recording this podcast. So we'll be checking Twitter to see if anything breaks once again. But it is exciting times here in Gator Nation. And of course, because of all that, make sure that you are subscribed down below. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss a single episode of All Kinds of Weather Forecasts and all of the updates that are going to be coming hot and heavy over the next few days here, because there will be a lot. Please don't forget to like this video if you're fired up about all the great things happening here in Gator Nation. Your support means everything to us, and this helps us get our content out to you all. And we'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment down below, your reaction to the Gators' victory over the Noles this past Saturday up in Tallahassee. And if you're listening on one of our audio platforms, please take a moment to rate and review the show. Leaving a 5-star rating helps us reach even more listeners. We truly appreciate it, Gator Nation. And we want to shout out, of course, our wonderful sponsors of the show. The In All Kinds Weather Forecast is proudly sponsored by 401k Generation, the wealth management company that helps you invest today for your future tomorrow. Their team of advisors is committed to providing guidance and education for their 401k plan and its participants, and they also offer a range of enrollment solutions tailored to meet the unique needs of your company's 401k plan. Whether it's saving for your child's college, investment advice, or even your retirement, 401k Generation's team of advisors makes getting to know you their top priority. Their advisors will tailor a path to assist you in navigating life's financial milestones and reaching your financial goals. 401k Generation, building stronger futures one generation at a time. For more information, contact them at 866-998-5879 or visit their website at 401kgeneration.com. And we also want to shout out the official apparel partner of the In All Kinds Weather Forecast. That is Heads and Tails, located here in Tampa, Florida. And for our listeners and fans, we have a special code for you using the code IAKOW30 for 30% off in store or online at theheadsandtails.com. You can get yourself one of these reversible swamp hats in store or online, and a plethora of other goodies to stock up for your holiday season, and make sure to give those gifts to your loved ones and your friends out there. Head into the store at Heads and Tails here in Tampa or online at theheadsandtails.com using the code IAKOW30 for 30% off. All right, Gator Nation, let's get right into it. The Florida Gators have one of their more satisfying wins of the season, because it is a win over a rival, a statement victory, 31-11 over the Florida State Seminoles in Tallahassee. Obviously, there's a lot to unpack here, but I think we've really got to lead the show off tonight with the scene after the game. And if anybody watched college football yesterday, I think you could sum up Saturday in one statement: is rivalry week is back. There were probably over 8 scuffles or brawls in a rivalry game last week, kicking off, of course, if people were watching the noon game of Ohio State and Michigan, and it did not end there. It went through the 3:30 games. You saw it at Auburn and Alabama in the Iron Bowl. It carried into our game at the end as George Gums Jr. plants the flag at the 50-yard line, causing a scuffle and causing Mike Karen Norvell, as we'll label him on the show here, to have a little moment with Billy Napier, saying that that is not allowed. Keep in mind, this is the same coach that condoned a school that has condoned for over a generation now the showing off of a dead alligator head to be paraded around Ben Hill Griffin Stadium and in their own stadium when they've beaten us. And they also came to Ben Hill Griffin Stadium last year when they beat us and removed sod from our field to go to their graveyard cemetery of fields where they've gotten victories. I understand it is a tradition of theirs. But we said it on this show last year. If you don't like that, don't lose the game. That was our message to our team and to our fan base who were upset at that moment. Well, last night, Florida State got a little taste of their own medicine in that Florida, in getting their first victory at Doak Campbell Stadium in 6 years since 2018, came in needing a win to secure their first winning season under Billy Napier. And FSU was on the heels of the worst season in their illustrious modern history. Now have finished the season 2-10 with no conference wins to show for it, obviously no bowl game, and continuing to lose recruits left and right, as we talked about last week, losing commits to us. And now they've lost another one to Georgia Tech this evening, and potentially losing Solomon Thomas to either Florida or LSU by signing day. But George Gunn planting the flag at midfield, it was bold, it was brash, and it set off a frenzy. Billy Napier, who has been all about discipline and winning culture, made it clear in the locker room that's not who they were going to be as a program. He publicly apologized in his press conference, calling it embarrassing and a distraction from what was otherwise a well-played football game. But listen, we need to be real for a second. This is a rivalry game. Tempers are going to flare. Emotions are going to run high. A lot of these guys played against each other in high school. Both schools recruited each of the players on the field that played against each other last night. And as Tyreek Sapp said it after the game, we don't like them and they don't like us. It's a rivalry, folks. It is a rivalry. And to be honest, I was really pleased to see some passion once again in the college game for when, and I think in an era where we've got NIL, we've got guys transferring left and right, and people seemingly aren't playing for the logo on the front of their chest, but they're playing for the name on the back. It was refreshing to see that people took a lot of pride in winning these games and even losing these games because of how bad it felt to lose it and what that opposing team was doing on their home field. So for me, it was actually kind of refreshing to see Rivalry Week return to college football and that our game was a part of that, despite the fact that these two teams are far from where they want to be as programs. Florida finishing 7-5, getting their first winning record in 4 years is great, but 7-5 is not the Gator standard. We all know it, and we're building a program and hopefully riding this wave of momentum to a college football playoff berth in 2025 because of it. And obviously Florida State, who's won 3 national championships in the last 31 years, does not want to be 2-10 forever. So it's good to see, though, that despite the records, despite all the other things going on in college football right now, Rivalry Week, we saw a lot of passion on the field. Now, this really matters because in a lot of different ways. It wasn't just any victory. This was a Gators team that had been battered and bruised all season. They were battered and bruised once again physically on this one, as we at one point we lost our guy Cam Jackson, who did come back and played a fantastic game. We'll get into his stat line here in a little bit. But they've been without guys like Graham Mertz, Jason Marshall, Eugene Trey Wilson, and they finished the season on a 3-game winning streak despite the fact that they've been losing guys left and right. They've beat 2 ranked teams in LSU and Ole Miss, and now capping it off with a dominant win over the Noles. And to be honest, a dominant win by the scorers, the scoreboard, and the stat sheet, but definitely could have been worse if Florida had not had some issues with the offense, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But look, we are very critical of Coach Napier here, and I think rightfully so, because the team was not playing well at the beginning of the season. But he deserves a ton of credit for steering the ship when things looked bleak after blowout losses to Miami and Texas A&M respectively in the first 3 games of the season. There were some in-season adjustments. They did tweak the lineup at times. We saw a lot more freshmen play, and some of it because of necessity. Guys like Jaden Ball had to step up because Montrell Johnson went down. Obviously, DJ Lagway went in because Graham Mertz was gone for the season. You've seen guys like Dejon Johnson step up in the place of Jason Marshall Jr. and Devin Moore going down. The team did not fold, though. They fought back. They fought hard. They didn't quit. And this coaching staff and everybody in that building deserves a ton of credit for that, because it could have gone south very quickly. In the middle of the season, when you've lost your starting quarterback, you're basically middling around 500, and you still got the gauntlet of the schedule ahead of you when we had to play Georgia, Texas, LSU, and Ole Miss. Could have lost all four of those games, and we didn't. We ended up winning two out of four, and if it weren't for a DJ Lagway injury against Georgia, maybe 3-1 in that span. Who knows? And DJ Lagway, what an impressive guy. He didn't have a very good night. This maybe actually was probably his worst performance as a starter, taking the Georgia game aside, but really the stat line was not overly impressive. He struggled to get going early on. He was 14 of 22, 133 yards passing, two touchdowns. He threw an interception in this game that drive should have resulted in a touchdown, and the score would have been more lopsided like it should have been. But you have to really applaud his composure in this game. I mean, the play where he shook off Jackson from Florida State, a 330-pound defensive lineman, shedded him off, was able to keep his balance, turn his hips, and deliver a dime to Chimere Dike down the sideline that extended the drive. And that drive resulted in a touchdown. Lagway is special. It was another viral DJ Lagway moment. He had him against Ole Miss. He had him against LSU. And the legend continues to grow in this game. Lagway is now 5-1 as a starter, and he has proven that he's going to be the cornerstone going forward. He is said after the game, he is actively talking to guys who are going to be making decisions this week on where they're going to be playing their college ball. But he leads the locker room with a lot of humility, a lot of confidence, and obviously the arm talent is something to behold. Now, I think going forward, there's some things he's going to have to work on in this game. It showed itself in this game where he struggled, continues to struggle in the short and intermediate passing game. He's one of the worst in QBR, according to Pro Football Focus, with throws between 5 and 10 and 10 to 15. But then when he gets beyond 20, he's incredibly accurate. There's not a lot of quarterbacks I can really think of in the history of college football where that is the case. But that's stuff that's correctable, where he's going to get into the lab, like I've talked about before, work on it with his coaches this offseason. It's timing, it's footwork, it's technique. And he'll have his receivers that are coming back next season, the guys that they recruit, the guys that'll get through the transfer portal. And he will work with them through the spring and in the summer. And I really believe you're going to see better timing next season. You'll see better route concepts because of it. This could become a high-powered attack in 2025, which is why a lot of fans are really, really excited about the things that he can do. Looking at else on the offensive state, you got to shout out Montrell Johnson Jr., who once again led the Gators for the second week in a row in rushing, finishing with 10 carries, 99 yards, and he capped it off with a 65-yard house call to put the game away 24-3 in the fourth quarter. And he also broke 3,000 yards in doing it on that run. He's had an amazing career, a college career. Played 3 great years here at the University of Florida, stayed loyal to the program, was one of Billy Napier's first transfers that he brought in over from University of Louisiana. And, I think that it's obvious Jaden Ball has a much higher ceiling in his college career. But Montrell Johnson is a true Gator, and we need to salute him. We need to applaud him for what he's given this program over the years and root him on at the next level. I think he might get his opportunity there. We'll see. And hopefully, I would love to see him play the bowl game if he is willing to do so. This is that time of year where guys tend to make business decisions if it is their final time. And I hate the fact that we live in an era of college football where that's even a thought. But it'd be great to see him play in the orange and blue one more time before he hands the reins off to Jaden Ball next season at full time. Overall, this was an impressive rushing attack, though. 235 yards rushing for the Gators in this game. Jaden Ball finished with 81 yards on the ground. Jacoby Jackson had 10 carries, 51 yards on the ground, and a touchdown to get the party started in scoring. Gators averaged 6.2 yards a carry on a night when the passing game was not as strong. Now, with the passing game, Chimere Dike finished with 3 catches for 63 yards, averaging 21 yards a catch. Off night for Elijah Badger. This is one of those games where because he only had 11 yards on the night with 2 catches, he's not likely now to get 1,000 yards on the season to break that long-standing drought of Florida receivers getting 1,000 yards in a season. It was definitely off. Marcus Burke caught his second touchdown pass of the season. He's in his final year as in the orange and blue. Played a state championship game in Tallahassee, getting a touchdown in that game, and all these years later now has come back and got a touchdown in a rivalry game, so that was good to see. Hayden Hansen continues to be the leading tight end in the room. He had 3 catches for 25 yards in this one. And shout out to Tony Livingston, the Tampa kid out of King High School here, got his first touchdown catch as a Gator to seal the game at the end. And I got to say, that last touchdown was gratifying because, a 24-11 win, we would have been talking about this game very differently and recapping it. A 13-point win versus a 20-point win is a massive delta, huge delta, almost an ocean of difference. And getting that touchdown at the end, and it was refreshing to see Napier say, nope, I am not going to run this ball and sit on it to run the clock out, because he certainly could have done that, and he's done that before. He, at least, I think, understood in the moment this was a rivalry game. He had a chance to run the score up against an inferior opponent, and he did it. So I applaud Napier for doing that. Very thankful he did that, and it gave Tony Livingston his first touchdown pass as a Florida Gator. Now, that's our offensive side of things. We got to talk about the defense here. The defense was the story, really, of the night. They were lights out. 8 sacks, 5 fumble recoveries, 7 forced fumbles. George Gums Jr., Tyreek Sapp, Cam Jackson, Jack Pyburn, everybody feasted on the Florida State offensive line, who has had a horrific season. And it continued on this night, holding the Noles to 99 yards rushing, 239 yards of total offense, forcing a season high for this defense of 5 turnovers. I mean, I said going into this game, one of the keys I wanted to see was for us to play a clean game. Outside of that turnover by Lagway in the red zone early in the game, Florida played a very clean game for most, outside of the penalties. Penalties were the story here. Seven penalties for 7 yards. Florida State actually had no penalties in this game. But the defense, completely opportunistic, forcing a lot of these. I mean, there was the bad toss play by Cromenhuck down at the goal line where Florida State could have scored there, but Florida forced a lot of these penalties or these turnovers, and they could have had more. I mentioned they recovered 5 fumbles in the game, but this could have been even worse for the Gators on this day. I mean, it was just so refreshing to see that the Gators lived in the backfield, 14 tackles for loss, 8 sacks, like I mentioned. Shout out Bud Elliott, who in the summer said that not a single one of these Florida defensive linemen would start on this Florida State team. Well, Bud, I think your Menchies might be a little bit on fire now after that performance, because I'd love to know the odds from FanDuel of all these guys who on our defensive line now have a chance to play in the NFL, because I'd say they're pretty high. Now, granted, against an inferior offensive line, they feasted, but that's exactly what you're supposed to do. So this defense just played lights out. They played amazing, did not allow Florida State to have any hope in this game. And when the offense was struggling, held the line in order for them to get everything going, which they did. And Florida was then, by virtue of that, able to run away with this game. And we'll shout out Cam Jackson here. Had a tremendous game. 5 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 tackles for losses, was hurt on the opening drive of the game. We were really worried that he would not come back onto this one, but he did return and had a major impact on this one, tying the team high for the night with 2 sacks. Cam, we salute you. You were a great guest on the show. You're a great human being. It was great to meet you after the LSU game. We wish you all the best in your next chapter in your football career. So great job. You will be forever a great Gator. And I think the other thing, too, is a lot of the young guys continue to step up in this one. TJ Searcy had, I think, his best game of the season. He had 5 tackles, one for loss. Bryce Thornton once again showing up in the stat sheet again, getting a tackle for loss, having tied for the most tackles on the team with 7. That was shared with Shamar James. Jaden Robinson coming in forcing a fumble, recovering a fumble, having two sacks in this game of his own. Tyreek Sapp, like we mentioned, living in the backfield, two tackles for loss, a sack in this one, and Jack Pyburn, the Bulls kid, a big rivalry game for him. Growing up a Gator fan, understands the significance of this game, played a tremendous game. Excited to see what he's going to do next year. The last guy I'll shout out here, George Gums Jr., the NIU transfer who used to play tight end, comes to the University of Florida to play linebacker, edge rusher, and has lived up to an expectation that I don't think anybody could have predicted. But this guy now is the foundation for the future of this defense. What he's been able to do from a pass rushing perspective, and even at times dropping back into coverage, a versatile weapon for this defense and what Austin Armstrong and Ron Roberts have been doing. So I don't think anybody could have predicted he would have been the impact transfer on the defensive side of the ball, but he has truly been that. So one of the best gets over the offseason, along with Tre'Quezi Bridges. Without him, I'm not sure where this secondary would be given all the injuries, like with Devin Moore and Jason Marshall, Aaron Gates. Just overall, I mean, a tremendous night for what the defense was able to do. This is exactly why we were hoping to see some improvement on this side of the ball, and we got it. And we're going to cover all three sides of the ball here. I'm highlight the special teams. Florida made the hire of this offseason to bring in Joe Houston. And now, according to the S&P Plus, which is our ESPN metric rankings, which contribute to a lot of these power rankings we talk about on the show, Florida is finishing the season third in special teams. Have they had their moments this year where there's been lapses? Absolutely. Not been perfect. You're not going to be perfect. But to finish going from where we were last year to finish third in S&P, I mean, we've recovered two muff punts 2 weeks in a row. Just all of that Florida's been able to do there on that side of the ball, and they have not been a major liability whatsoever. Lost us games last year. Wouldn't say won us games this year, but didn't lose us games, and we needed that. That was that extra layer we needed, and that's a 2-game difference right there. We went from 5 to 7 in 1 year. So shout out to what Joe Houston and bringing that NFL pedigree, that knowledge to the University of Florida. They have stepped up in a big way. And the other thing I want to shout out to is the offensive line. Austin Barber, Najee Harris, stepping up huge in the latter half of the season. Guys like Jake Slaughter, who are one of the top centers in the country according to Pro Football Focus, opening the holes up to give us 235 yards on the ground in this game. Stellar stuff. So big picture, what does this mean? For one, obviously we talked about it. Guarantees a 7-5 season, a bowl game, something this program hasn't had since 2020. But it feels like we continue to see that what we've been saying. Is this a turning point? We've been saying this for weeks. Are we building momentum? It really now starts. This to me solidifies that we have it. This is the first time in Billy Napier's tenure that he has a 3-game winning streak against FBS opponents. He had a 3-game winning streak in 2023, but one of those was against McNeese State. This is the first time he's done it against FBS opponents. He is now 1 victory away. If he gets the bowl victory, he'll now be 500 as a coach. Obviously, through 3 seasons, not the Gator standard. We'll reiterate that. But we are starting to see some momentum there. And if he does win the bowl game, it would be his first 4-game win streak as the Gators coach. It's easy to see the foundation that Napier's building, the culture that he has built up to this point. You're going to see some attrition. We did see some transfers today. Andy Jean, Justice Boone announced that they would be transferring after this season. We wish them the best of luck. But you're going to see the foundation of these guys who were huge contributors this season. They're going to be the leaders of this team. Right now, the program's not perfect. There's a lot of work to be done. But I think Gator Nation was not expecting to finish this season with such optimism heading into 2025. Getting a rivalry win was a cherry on top finally. And I think going forward, Florida has a lot of things to be excited about for next season. And speaking of that, the future, we'll now go ahead and move over to recruiting because I feel like every time we have this show, we have recruiting news to now report. And that is today that the Gators once again have got four-star defensive lineman Joseph Mbachu back into the Gators class. Many of you will remember that he was a Gators pledge at one point, decommitting in the fall. He committed to Texas a little over a week ago, and all of a sudden has now flipped back to the Gators after joining the Longhorns class 8 to 9 days ago. He is the 22nd ranked defensive lineman in the country, the 258th player overall, according to the On3 industry rankings. He was back on campus for when the Gators played host to LSU's, the upset over LSU. And he was back on campus Sunday. So he made a surprise visit, and that ultimately got the deal done for the Gators. You know, I think there's a lot of infusion of NIL funds now starting to come into the program. We said that when we part of the game plan when we retained Billy Napier was to take the funds that we were going to go toward the buyout and divert them to NIL. We're starting to see that. And I'll say this right now. Florida's not done yet. They are far from done. In fact, it's going to be exciting. I think will be one of the more exciting national signing days that Florida's had in recent years. I think there's been a lot of lead up to signing days where there's been some hope that Florida could get some big commitments. This year, I truly believe that Florida's going to get them. We're going to go a little bit more in depth and give you a preview of what that could look like here on this show later in the week. So make sure you're listening to that before Wednesday. And of course, we'll be recapping it all Wednesday, probably releasing that episode on Thursday. But the Gators got serious momentum now on the trail. Several weeks ago, we weren't even a top 50 class. The Gators, as of tonight, are now the number 14 class in the country and climbing. A top 10 class is absolutely within reach. Part of that is because there is news now that Florida is now favored to flip another big prospect, a guy that Florida was in contention for back in the summer, four-star, top 100 player, Hilton Stubbs, the Miami commit, who's been a part of that class for a long time, has now been predicted by both On3 and 247 to flip to the Gators. But wait, there's more. Lagonza Hayward, who also was once a Florida target, committed around the same time Hilton Stubbs did to Miami to Tennessee. Today, decommitted from Tennessee. And now, according to Steve Wilfong, we got a Fong bomb here, Von 3 is now predicted to commit to the Gators. That is Florida's safety class right there. Those were the guys Florida wanted in the class. I don't think anybody could have predicted this. This is an astounding development for this program. And you've got to, it's just, there was no hope for Florida a month ago. We were the complete dismay that we felt when we were retaining Billy Napier. We proceed to get throttled by Texas on the road 49-17. And it was like, what have we done? But the Gators have just found themselves in the last couple of weeks. This is truly something that I don't think we've ever seen. I cannot recall a time where this has ever happened in college football. To be able to flip now 11 prospects in a month. I think we need to have a case study on this one day and talk about it, especially if Billy Napier results in Billy Napier winning a national championship. You could write a book on all of this. We reserve the copyright of that. Now that I've put it out there, everybody remember this copyright. Christian says you could write a book on this because I cannot think of anything in the modern era of college football where we've seen such a turnaround. A guy who was almost fired has now ringed off 3 consecutive wins, 2 against ranked opponents, 2 teams that were vying for a college football playoff berth, and now has saved his job, has flipped 11 commitments, and is now tracking for a top 10 class after he was not even 50 a few weeks ago. And part of that, too, we missed these two guys. Edge rusher Jaden Woods out of Shawnee, Kansas, who was committed to Texas, is now flipped to Florida. And Tavarius Dice, who was committed to Auburn, a longtime Florida target. Florida had him incredibly high on the board, flipped to the Gators. So the momentum that brings Florida to 22 commits. And like we just mentioned, will be in the class, and we will surely probably get more. Now, I just looked on 247. I mentioned Florida was 14th according to On3, the team rankings. They are actually 12th on 247. So, I mean, if we get these guys to join the Florida class, I mean, if you get Lagonza Hayward, I'm trying to do this in real time here, that would bring Florida to 266. And if we get Hilton Stubbs, let me just add him in there at a Mandarin, that would bring Florida to 273.83, which would give Florida the number 9 class in the country. Just those two guys alone, who are now predicted to go to Florida. If those two guys flip, 2 top 100 prospects, that puts Florida over the edge and gives them 24 commits and a top 10 class. And I actually don't think Florida would be done there either. I think that there would be some guys out there. Whenever you get this momentum, it seems to snowball. It seems to snowball. So obviously, we said in the comments earlier in the show, let us know, your reaction to the Florida State game, but also let us know your reaction to all these commitments and really just how you're feeling about all this. Just let us know. Sound off, Gator Nation. We really want to hear from you. But I think we're going to get some more, and I would expect at least potentially 3 more joining. Solomon Thomas put out a hourglass emoji tweet earlier today. Who knows what that means? There's been some conjecture that maybe he's leading to LSU, but some guys have refuted that. So, ultimately, you'll just have to wait and see. But there's also reports that French, the 5-star receiver out of Mandarin, is on campus as well. So the reports confirming that. There's some guys on the message boards talking about it. We'll see. But Florida right now is off to a furious finish to the finish line. And we will be here at the In All Kinds of Weather Forecast reporting it for you. So make sure to hit that subscribe button down below if you're not already. It's free to do so. We really appreciate you guys and all your support. And we will be here to bring it all to you. Want to go ahead now, before we close the show, let's get those fan comments. And I really just want to give my thanks to a lot of the fans out there. Obviously, Neil will be putting an article talking about, he actually put out an article today talking about how Florida celebrated this win, all the various ways we did that, and recapping the game. So make sure you go read that article at inallkindsofweather.com. He will also be putting out stuff about recruiting this upcoming week. We'll have our signing day tracker there, so don't forget that. He also eventually, though, this is what I was getting to, will be putting out an article talking about the new structure that we have here in All Kinds of Weather. I think a lot of you have started to get to know me a little bit more here as your podcast host. Neil will be talking all about that and kind of where we're planning to take In All Kinds of Weather to new heights in 2025. Along, hope to ride that wave with the Florida Gators football program. And I mentioned that because there were a lot of great comments and great feedback from our fans in the recap episode or the preview episode for FSU. Zaire Gator Buck said, can we all give Chris a huge shout out for awesome job he's doing with these solo shows? We see you, Chris. Appreciate you, Zaire. Appreciate all the comments you drop in our show and appreciate all your support. K Swiss 6978. Happy Thanksgiving, Chris and Neil. Go Gators. Go Gators. K Swiss. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving. Tracy Taylor. Great commentary, Chris. Go Gators. Go Gators, Tracy. Appreciate your support. Gator Tim. Enjoy your content, Chris. Go Gators. Go Gators. Gator Tim. Love that name. And Tim Tebow. Probably to get a Tim Tebow thing there. I don't know. We'll see. Lorenzo Fleming says, happy Thanksgiving and predicting a UF win over FSU 31-21. Got the 31 right, Lorenzo. And so did Neil. Shout out to Neil. Neil had this one as 31-17. He did get that one right. I had Gators 37-10. If Norvell didn't go for the weird 2-point conversion there, it would have been 10 for the Noles. So, and Dustin's model had the Gators right on. They were the closest. He had us Florida winning by 17. Florida, of course, won by 20. The model this week, if you're following along, was 6-4. against the spread and 8-2 on the money line. So if you had bet with the and all kinds of weather forecaster for the second week in a row, you would have made money. So definitely continue to follow along with that. Next season, as we continue to put that out, Dustin has really, I think, started to fine tune that model in the forecaster. So if you're not paying attention, we definitely be looking for that. We're going to be pushing that out there more, and we want to give our fans just some added content that maybe you wouldn't find anywhere else in Gator content land. Keeping up here with some other comments. Swamp Rowdy predicted a 35-3 win, Gators, and a happy Thanksgiving. Swamp Rowdy, happy Thanksgiving to you. Hope you and your family had a good one. Cooper, 31-89, 28-10, Florida wins. Cooper, the difference was pretty close there, and you got the, once again, if FSU didn't go for that weird two-pointer, you would have had their total correct. Uh, and then Dazzle one had a 35-9 victory. A little bit high on that one. We had a 49-10 one from Yilo Bast 4665. I'm not sure if that's how you say it. A little high on that one, but I love the confidence there. Maybe if Florida wouldn't have thrown that red zone interception and would have had their offense going a little bit, they would have definitely pushed it forward. But still a good score. And then reading some additional comments from the other episode that I did with Neil on our Black Friday episode. Fragrance Journey said, "Shout out Neil, great show, fellows. Appreciate your support there." Swamp Rowdy, as I've said before, if Napier opens next season with a bad loss to Miami, similar to this season's loss, then the fire Billy Napier returns. But if we beat Miami and get on a roll, that will validate this turnaround. Go Gators. All right, so Swamp Rowdies want to see a win over Miami. I don't think we actually open the season with Miami next year. They haven't officially released the schedule for 2025 in its order. I think that'll probably be the second or third game the way it's starting to shape up. That'll be in Miami, of course, and that's going to be a very different looking Miami team without Cam Ward. So we definitely got to get that win, though, and revenge that loss from last season in the Swamp. Another comment from Zaire Gator Bucks. Sure, we won and just beat the Garnet and Shame at Choke Shambles Stadium. Love that, which is always awesome. However, Napier proved myself and the diehard Gator fans who can be honest enough to always keep certain things in perspective. We saw another Billy Napier coach team revert back to not coming out and playing with any fire and looked unprepared to go to battle when he had all the momentum. Also, side note, I'm proud of DJ for finding some sort of rhythm in the game because he did not look comfortable for much of this game. However, DJ needs to fix his body language when the going gets tough out there. I've gradually noticed that it's a subtle flaw that he has that he needs to change because that truly can matriculate itself down to the rest of the team, especially from quarterback position. Go Gators. Zaire, I think I know what you're talking about. It was after the interception. He was visibly upset and that interception, I don't even know if it's much on him as it was on the receiver, one of the receivers running the wrong route. There were two receivers 3 yards away from each other. I'm pretty sure that ball was intended for DK. And then you had Burke there who ended up like kind of getting in the way of DK on that. That probably is, it could be a touchdown, or if not down to the 1 yard line, if the confusion's not there. I personally, I liked the passion. I liked the passion. I like that he was upset about him. And I think for me, what that shows is that he's setting a standard for himself that should matriculate down to the roster. He's holding himself to a high standard, and that other people in turn should be doing the same thing. So personally, Zaire, I read that as a good thing. That actually he's showing that fire. And as far as a slow start, the one thing I will say, Billy Napier needs a play caller, a dedicated play caller. He needs to go out and hire an OC, and that's something that people have alluded to that he's potentially going to look into doing. He has to make that change this offseason because DJ Lagway needs it, and we need to have a better in-game script going forward because yes, we got the run game going. Yes, as you mentioned, DJ Lagway got into a rhythm. It definitely could have been better though from the get-go if we had a better start. We need to get faster starts next year, and I think getting a play caller in there will be a huge difference. And if it doesn't, I think we're limiting ourselves to the potential that we could be in the future. And Billy Napier might not reach where Florida really wants to be as far as the Gator standard goes. To my point here, Rick H8275 says, hire a great OC and just sit back and be the head coach. Totally agree, Rick. Totally agree on that one. Lions, Magic, Rays, Gators. I think we know your fandom now. Early in the season, I wanted him gone, but 3 of the last 4 games have showed me he can get it done. Not that he will 100%, Assuming we don't have a letdown tomorrow, I have a lot of hope, and that has to translate into 8 wins minimum next year. Would prefer 9 plus. Yeah, no, I think he's got to get 9 plus 10. I said 10-2. I think 10-2 really needs to be the barometer because that's what's going to guarantee you, as we've seen this year now, 10-2 teams in the SEC over 90% chance they're going to make the playoff. So, and it gets you into contention of playing for an SEC championship, which I think there's a lot of pride in that. We want to win our conference again. It's then, we haven't won the national championship since 2008, but we haven't won the SEC either. And we've had a few cracks at it in the last decade. We want to finally knock that door down in Atlanta and get a championship. So getting to 10 wins will allow you to do that. So I think really we got to set our sights on 10 wins. I'm going to keep hammering that home here between now and next season. One more comment. Let's see. Jeffrey Schuler, 7-2, 7-1 after the Tennessee game. I wanted him gone. That game was a win, if not for any of the three of his play calls. After UJ, I was iffy. Now I'm on his bandwagon. Just win versus FSU. Well, Jeffrey, he got the win. So it looks like you're firmly on the bandwagon, as are a lot of us here in Gator Nation. So greatly appreciate you all once again for tuning in to another episode of In All Kinds of Weather Forecasts, recapping the Gators' big rivalry win, 31-11. So make sure to go read all about it at inallkindsofweather.com, recapping how we celebrated in our emphatic way. And if you didn't see, follow us on the Instagram page. We put out a video of kind of re-showing that. So make sure if you're not following us on Instagram, please do so. Make sure you're following us on all of those good things. Follow me on Twitter, Matt, Mr. Chris Bits. You can, I'll be tweeting out some things and my thoughts on this in real time, especially as signing day comes up. Make sure you're following that recruiting handle at IIKOW Recruiting. We'll keep putting out those updates and hit that subscribe button down below. It's free to do so. Helps us reach Gator Nation and all the great content out there. So from all of us here at the All Kinds of Weather Forecast, go Gators. It feels good to beat those Knowles once again.